Ground Radio. New voices amplified.
Welcome to Your Ground, and this is King Boaz, your host. You know that we bring you many different things here, new voices amplified all the time. But today I have legends in many respects. I would write another book if I was going to say what they are, but I will allow them to introduce themselves. They have so many hats, but today they are here because of something special. But I will give them 30 seconds or so to introduce themselves. Dr. Tich and Dr. Princisca, if you can briefly introduce yourselves and tell you what you're about.
Well, thank you so much. It's good to be here. Dr. Tich here, my beautiful wife, Princisca, Dr. Princisca. We're very passionate about people development, coaching. So we're in the coaching business. We do success coaching, business coaching, marriage coaching, and now sex coaching as well. So we're also in the filmmaking space and music space and ministry as well. So we are passionate about equipping people for personal success. We're also into education through a school. So we educate people, we are developing people in all aspects of life.
And I'm the beautiful wife that does all the runaround.
Nice. You've written so many books and done so many things, but maybe because of the book that you're going to be talking about today, if we can start off with the book, Married and Loving It. What inspired that book, and how successful has it been? What has been the reception in general?
Wow, we wrote that one because
we are married and loving it. It's really nice life experience, very nice.
Yes, we came through a journey of discovering what marriage is, and then we started working with many marriages, hundreds of marriages, and we discovered many people were not sure what to do. They didn't know what steps to take. So that then inspired us to then say, let's put the content, the wisdom that we're sharing in the seminars and coaching sessions in a book. And that really became a compendium of all those sessions and seminars that we were doing, basically saying, if you want to be married and loving it, not enduring marriage, not struggling through marriage, not surviving your marriage, but married and loving it. That was the wisdom that people can use to say, these are the changes and the content that's going to equip me to be a better wife or better husband. So that was our journey put into content so that people can make use of it.
Nice. Yeah, and then you went on to write the book, The Greatest Sex Ever. What inspired this book? Who between the two of you say, like, I think we're doing this thing right. Let's write a book about it.
He's the crazy one. He's the crazy, like I said, our wife just has to submit and do everything. But no, a lot of ideas are inspired from him, or rather, I think the boldness, actually, I think that's the right word. The boldness to say, let's tell it as it is. So he's the engine that says, let's take it out there. And I certainly jumped in to say, you know what? Sex, yes, let's talk about sex in the Christian community. And so we are officially the sex doctors.
So the journey was quite interesting in that, think of making a movie. And after you've done your movie, you then go back and you do your bloopers and behind the scenes. So this book basically is a combination of our bloopers, our mistakes, the things that we didn't do right. And then somewhere along the line, you bump into the right things to do and you say, hey, I wonder how many people know how to do this thing right. But with the divorce rate and people saying, I'm not happy and my wife is not giving me enough sex. The wives are saying, my husband is not giving me quality sex.
He wants too much sex.
So it's a competition between the quality of sex and the quantity of sex. So we said, hey, let's take our bloopers and share them with the world. Perhaps somebody will read it and learn how not to repeat the bloopers we made.
All right. Yeah. Apart from maybe the blunders that you might have encountered and overcome. You're also people that are driven by the Bible by and large. Most of the things that you've done is based on the word of God. Does God say anything about sex? And is sex something that should be enjoyed?
Mm. Oh,
yes. God is all for sex. In fact, he created sex, and so I think we also in the book really bring across the point to actually come to a point where we putting in the totality, the wholeness of God, because as believers, we want to, say, God is in this and this and that. And then when we get into the sex part, we feel that it's probably God is probably not in it. And it's such a topic that you can't really talk about. But God is the originator of sex. So I think the biggest point there is to come back to say, especially if you're a believer, and because that's where sometimes we really feel so reserved, and sex out there in the world looks like, whoa, and then it's in church with believers, it looks like something that we must shy away from and maybe cannot be spoken from the pulpit. And so, yes, definitely sex is a gift from God. When he says every good and perfect gift comes from the Father from above, so sex is a gift from God. You can't say this is from God or this is not from God.
Yeah, Proverbs actually says, warning the son, the husband, he says, let her breasts satisfy you. And I'd always tell my wife, I love your breasts. I enjoy your breasts. They're absolutely amazing. And we're designed to react and respond to the physical appearance of our wives. So the Bible actually says, let her breasts satisfy you. That word satisfy means overwhelm, flood you, satiate you, bring you full contentment. So if God is saying, let her breast satisfy you, he's very interested. In Corinthians, in the New Testament, the Bible also says, defraud not one another, but be generous in giving each other to your spouse in the sexual arena. And then he says there in one translation, he says the bedroom or sexual life is not a place of standing up for your rights. In other words, you're saying it's my right, so I need to have sex. And it's a place of mutuality, a mutual commitment to satisfying each other and meeting each other's sexual needs. And that's exactly how God designed sex to be. So I think God speaks a lot more about sex than he does about holiness and all the other subjects that we love to preach about, but we try and avoid that because we're cautious.
And of course, one of the favorites, he says in Proverbs, drink from your own cistern, drink from your own well. Yep. So yeah, sex is actually designed by God to be one way. It's actually partnership with one person. But we see, this cistern, it's almost, we always say, can you imagine you share one water bottle among 20 people with COVID and a number of things, So, but absolutely, so we need to understand that sex is designed by God for you with your specific partner.
Nice. Yeah, you kind of preempted what I wanted to talk about next, but I will still try and maybe put it and see if we can glean more wisdom from that, because we spoke about many things, but the thing is, pornography is a billion-dollar industry. Prostitution is also something that is also popular all over the world. Even people go to the extent of human trafficking other human beings, because sex is something that is a commodity that has existed from probably when men fell, if we look at according to the Bible. But somehow the church has been silent on this subject. I usually talk to my friends and say my first sex encounter was with pornography, because there was nowhere else to learn this. There was no uncle, no aunt who was bold enough to teach me about this. There was no church which was there to teach you about this. What happened? Maybe what is wrong with the church in general, that they've shied away from this subject, and seems like it's easy to talk about it outside church and so difficult to talk about it inside church. And what can the church do going forward?
Yeah, that's a very important topic right there. The church has by and large been pushed into a place of irrelevance. We don't want to address the topics that are relevant for human existence. We prepare people for heaven, but we're not preparing people for life. So we don't talk money, we don't talk marketplace, we don't talk business, we don't talk marriage and sexuality. And we said, this is wrong because we are irrelevant if we're not addressing this very thing. I had the same encounter like you. My first encounter with sex was with porn, and it was like a shocker. You couldn't talk to anybody about what you're experiencing, what you're going through, because everybody was like, hush, hush. Your dad wouldn't even want to talk about it. You go to school and they'll talk about the birds and the bees, topics. I mean, it was just wrong wording. And it just made the topic so mystical. So we realized that the enemy does not want us to come openly about this, because anything that remains in the realm of secrecy and undercover will be abused, will not function well, and the enemy will be rampant there. So we have said to ourselves, we need to bring out this topic so that people are more open. Conversations are robust, and we are leaders in the conversation. The church has neglected, like you're saying, has neglected conversations about human trafficking and prostitution and so on. And we need to be the voice. I mean, right now, gender-based violence is a major thing. And gender-based violence is again connected to sexual dysfunction as boys, as children are being raised up and they get abused, they get fondled, they go through sodomy and pedophilia and all kinds of things. So we need to come back and say, we are the voice. God designed sexuality, and the confines of the context of sex is within marriage. Once it goes outside of that, it brings a whole lot of issues and heartache and heartbreak and frustrations. So we need to bring proper context to the subject of sexuality so that we can deal with a global issue that is really going out of control.
Yeah. So I totally believe that this is one of the first steps in the church arising. So that's the solution. As the church, we must arise. We must make sure we speak the fullness of the gospel, and it includes those day-to-day issues that people are facing. And so I guess we are out there to make noise about sex, and that it is godly.
Nice. Yeah. Before we get into the book, there's some very nice stuff in the book. Maybe I will throw in one last question. When is it appropriate, or what age is appropriate for anyone to talk to kids about sex? At what stage do you start telling your kids that this is something that's there, this is something that you will encounter, whether you're with friends, wherever, this is something that you will face, and how should you deal with it? Which age is appropriate for that to happen?
Well, for us, I think from the moment that your children, you're able to converse and have communication. So, for instance, even by the time our kids, we've got two girls and a boy, and by the time I was changing their diapers at the age of 2, the girls, and at the age of 3, we started communicating, and I would speak to them and teach them about their sexuality. And so I think I can say, as far as that, as long as when you're able to start conversing and have communication. So as a mother, I was privileged that I would bath my children and dress them up, and so we would talk about it. And so with the girls, as they grew up, we began to, even dad would speak. And so I remember when they were, 3 or 4, and would be in public spaces and even be in church, because you'd find that, again, perversion comes anywhere, whether in church, that's where you also see the abuse. And we'd tell them, don't let uncles be with you, don't be alone. So we literally would speak that kind of language to them. Now they're teenagers, and we speak, there's no holds bar. The only thing probably they don't have exposure to is probably their parents having sex, but they know everything because we've spoken everything. Why? Because I think literally from the age of 2, we started speaking to them about their sexuality.
Yeah. The problem that comes in is when parents don't teach their children about sexuality, they become vulnerable. They are exposed to uncles, relatives, friends that will then separate them in a room, or something then happens. You need to teach them, if anybody tries to touch you like this, scream, shout, make noise, avoid being alone with a man, with a woman, and so on. All of those are important conversation. And the second point being, if children don't learn to hear their parents' voice as the number one authority on a subject, then the world becomes the authority in that subject. So Google becomes the solution, and every other place that they're going into becomes a solution. So I decided I must be the highest authority in my children's voice when it comes to money, business, and sexuality.
Nice. Yeah. Now coming to the book, there's so many chapters there, over 300 pages that you can talk about. But maybe I would love to go to chapter 8 and chapter 9, hot, sloppy, and fun. Yeah. Yeah. What was the idea? What is it that you're trying to teach people, and where did this come from?
Yeah, well, for me, that's a topic that really blesses me so much, a chapter, because it firstly came from the experience that, it was something that was happening in our home, in our sexual life, and right in the middle of sexual activity, I would fall asleep, or I just didn't enjoy it. There are things that it was like, who do you tell? How do you even tell somebody that, I fell asleep, or I'm not enjoying this? And as much as you would talk outside with other people, but there was still this element where you just couldn't really expose what's really, really happening in the home. And after that, so I then took a decision to say, let me come out of the box. Let me put things together that will, let me be an initiator, rather. I think that's the right way. Let me be an initiator. How do I do it? Let me put some creativity around it. So in those two chapters, you will literally see, I think tips and things that actually encourage you on how to make your sex life electric. Things like the importance of obviously personal hygiene, and how you can do all sorts of picnics in the bedroom, games and fun things, and how you can literally go crazy. Like my husband always says, we don't need to get a pole for pole dancing. So I talk about, the use of your husband's legs as pole dancing. And so you really, I think it's just a crazy chapter, which again, coming from a believer's perspective and point of view, it's probably something that's like, really, is this what happens? But I think as far as sexuality is concerned, it doesn't discriminate to say, this is a believer, this is a non-believer. And I think what we need to do is actually, we are coming out to celebrate the gift that God has given. And because the experience that many people do struggle, more so in the church. And so we are really saying, let's make an effort in our sex to make it hot, sloppy, and fun.
Yeah. So the other interesting thing is, in the first book, Married and Loving It, there's a chapter in there that became very controversial. It was called Lessons from the Harlots.
Oh, yeah.
So we did a study of the harlots that are in the Bible, and why harlots are powerful. Harlots, prostitutes are so powerful. And the lessons is basically speaking to women to say, if you don't up your game, there's a harlot out there that's waiting to grab your husband. One of the most popular questions in our marriage and sex seminars is, we've been married for 5 years. Now we're getting bored, or my husband is boring, or my wife is not interested in sex. So we realized
that no orgasm.
Yeah, marriages that are non-orgasmic. And it became an issue. So we said to ourselves, if we can help couples to understand how to keep it hot. I mean, when men go out to a bar to look for a prostitute on the streets, all they're looking for is hot, sloppy, and fun. The difference between sex with that woman and sex with your wife is more, that one seems more exciting and adventurous. So we said, why can we not introduce the skills, the tips, the ideas that make marriage or sex life hot, sloppy, and fun?
Nice. Yeah.
Hot.
Yeah. Maybe still on the same chapter. I think that was Dr. Princisca's contribution. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, where she took a responsibility to say, I want to work on myself. It's my responsibility to enjoy this. And in the world, people have given each other a responsibility that he's not satisfying me, she's not satisfying me. How do people then work around that? Because people blame each other when it comes to this. Someone needs to know better it doesn't seem like it's my responsibility to know this. I want to say it's her fault.
Yeah. So, well, I think, at first I had put it all as his responsibility. Well, and I think probably generally that's the talk. It almost feels as though men have the responsibility. And so it became something that was a blame factor, and he would obviously feel so bad and feel like, what else can he do? So I think then I realized that this is not a man's thing or a husband, it's not the husband's role and responsibility. Also, I have a role and a responsibility to bring myself to that place of sexual fulfillment. And so it puts on a new attitude towards it. So now in this case, I always say whether the husband finds himself at a place where he feels like he's not satisfying his wife, because a lot of times the men are more silent about it, or whether it's on the wife's side, if you are struggling, which, whether you are male or female, and when you're struggling in this area, it means, first of all, before putting the blame, take that personal responsibility to say, how can I bring excitement into the game? You take part, you get involved. It's like anything, whether it's sporting activity or whatever, there is a responsibility you take on. You can't just sit back and relax. So when I did that, there was now a mutual creativity happening, and now it was a mutual responsibility, and so the enjoyment was certainly taken to the next level. And so it is a place of we both have the responsibility, and let's make it happen.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I will go on to the next chapter after the hot, floppy, sloppy, and fun, which is 2 mouths and 2 heads. What was the concept? Maybe if you can shed more light on that one, for people to understand what is really happening, or what message you're trying to shed on this chapter.
Okay. Well, again, that was that comes from me. Well, not me. Honestly, we're going into a couples retreat, with the late Miles Monroe. He had a marriage seminar. So I think the year preceding, after he had gone home to be with the Lord, they still called on for another seminar in South Africa, and we were invited as the speakers. And I prayed and said, Lord, what do you have for your people? What word shall I share? And it really came as a revelation, which is taken from Proverbs, and I think chapter 6 and chapter 7. And again, it's scripture speaking to a husband, warning him against the loose woman or the adulterous woman, because she comes in very seductively and very strongly. So you see, a dichotomy there where it means the man has a need for satisfaction, and the satisfaction is not being fulfilled by the wife, or there's a missing link somewhere, but there's a woman that is willing to come in and fulfill that role. And so on that aspect, I realized, and I said, okay, so the 2 mouths, the mouth I'm using to speak with, and obviously the second mouth that a woman has is the opening of her vagina. And so that was the 2 mouths. And so they say women talk too much. And so the point that we bring across is, ensure that in your marriage bed, this mouth doesn't do too much talking, because if the outward mouth talks too much, because that's really what you find, the outward talks too much, and then closed mouth is tightly closed, but the men want it open. And so when you talk too much, the man has the head, and of course he's got, the head of his penis. So whichever way, it's either he's using his first head or the second head. So if you know which mouth to use, you also are able to ensure that, because again, I say men only think with one head at a time. So you now need to be at a place where you ensure that you've got the right head at the right place. And also as a woman, you're using the right mouth at the right time.
Nice.
It's a powerful lesson that helps couples to really merge, because the attraction for the man to the woman is not always this mouth, but it's the other mouth. And for the woman, it's his intellect and his ability to connect with her. So when we learn to merge those two, couples get strongly bonded. And that's what the whole chapter really focuses on.
Nice. Yeah, and then sex for cash. Chapter 13 talks about sex for cash. Maybe if you can get into that and advise people what exactly is happening here and how can people do this.
Yeah, the title is very controversial, and people thinking, okay, are you saying we should be prostituting ourselves in our marriages? But
Yeah.
that's not what we're saying. About 10 years ago, in my research, I began to notice, even as a pastor, the couples in the church that had stronger marriages seemed to have greater financial stability. So I tried to find out what causes financial stability in a stronger marriage and lack of finances in a weaker marriage. And it comes back again to the subject of sex. And I did a whole paper and a whole research, which I called how to create wealth by having a great sex life. And when we began to teach this, Yahoo then also came up with some research that they did. And they discovered that couples that have sex 3 to 4 times a week were making 15% more income than couples that had sex maybe once or twice a week. So there was a correlation between your sex life and your financial status. So I said to myself, if this is true from a scientific perspective, we must have biblical evidence. So going back to Bible and marrying that with science, you then realize that sex has a very powerful ability, what they call the pleasure cycle, which is your brain registers pleasure. And whenever you have a pleasurable experience, if you have a donut or a cake that's extra nice, the pleasure center registers it and sends a message to your prefrontal cortex to say that cake was awesome. Let's find a strategy to have it again, because the prefrontal cortex is your strategy center. So that being said, let's move it to the sexual arena. If you have a great sex life, this happens for men, for men that are, whether married or not. The moment you have a great encounter, you want to repeat it again. So it moves from pleasure center to prefrontal cortex, and you create strategy on how to repeat it. So that's where the sex for cash comes in. So if a husband and a wife have a great sex life, in their minds, they're saying, we've got to repeat this. We've got to have a greater encounter the next time. So your strategy, your ability to think becomes supercharged. You become very creative. So the most creative men are men that have had sexual encounters that they're seeking to repeat. So once you bring that into marriage, here's how it simply works. We talk about the power of confidence. A great sex life gives you greater confidence to go into the marketplace. We talk about the power of clarity and focus. Your mind becomes more focused if you have a great sex life. For example, if we are fighting and the sex life is bad, my mind is focused on why is she not loving me? Why is our marriage bad? But if the marriage is great, my mind is focused on what ideas can I bring to the marketplace that will translate to money. So my presence in the marketplace increases exponentially based on the development of my brain. So there's a whole lot more stuff that's in there that will help people to say, I can develop my brain, which will translate to greater income and greater financial success.
And love is better with money.
Yes.
Yeah, it says money answereth all things.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Then if maybe you have one more chapter in the book that you would love to talk about before I move to other questions that I have for you.
I think the first chapter for me really stands out. It's called Lights, Camera, Action.
Yeah.
So more like the film industry. Basically, we're encouraging couples to say, you're not going to have a great marriage and a great sex life by default.
Yeah.
You can't make a great movie by just waking up and say, let's make a great movie. You've got to do the pre-production, the preparation. We want a script. We want to see where our locations are, the main actors, and etc. So all we're doing in that chapter is we're encouraging couples, you are the main actors in your own great sex movie. It's not going to happen by accident. What's your script? What styles do you want? How much sex do you want? How frequent do you want your orgasms? How creative do you want it to be? How adventurous do you want it to be? So you've got to come together, write a script, and after you've written the script, you're the director, you're the producer, you're the EP. So you can now come and say, lights, camera, action. Let's get into it. So it's basically a vision chapter, encouraging you to develop a clear vision that you can pursue. I love that chapter.
Oh, nice. Do you have a chapter that you can talk about, Dr. Princisca?
Well, for me, you really hit on my two chapters that I really, really love, just the hot, sloppy, and fun, and also the two mouths and the two heads. But also, I think one of the ones that I actually can bring, and probably on a more serious note, where everything is serious, is the marital setbacks. Signs that your marriage is under attack. Mm-hmm. And for me, that is very key. One of the things that I think one of the first pointers we put there is also just how the what you call headship authority is being stripped away in the context of marriage. Mm-hmm. And those are signs that your marriage is under attack. When you come to a point where in this wonderful world of advancement and career and all of that, if we come to a place where we lose the lines of authority in marriage, that one is one of the biggest downfalls that we are continuously seeing in marriage, where the headship authority is either being pulled away, or it's the head himself who literally has, folded his hands and probably thinks, I don't know where else to go or what to do. So those are, major signs that your marriage is headed, in the wrong direction, and you find that 5-6 years from now, you give birth to what is divorce, because you thought it was a light thing where there's disrespect and dishonor and there's no love in the marriage. So signs that your marriage is under attack is a very good chapter to look into.
Yeah, all right, nice. Then I will ask two things. One, should every woman orgasm? Two, is oral sex biblical? I know you addressed it somewhere in the book. Is oral sex biblical? What is the position of the church? What is your position on this in relation to the Bible? Second, is every woman capable of orgasm? Because I know even scientifically or through research, many women say they die without an orgasm. They've never experienced an orgasm.
Yes to all the questions. Yes, certainly women, it's possible. Every woman should experience an orgasm. And in fact, from there, we actually have a full teaching, which we entitled OMO, Operational Multiple Orgasm. So not only should they have experience an orgasm, but they can experience multiple orgasms. Again, and that is actually given, it's a byproduct of all the things that we've spoken about and positioning ourselves in terms of let's enjoy our sexual encounter. So it is possible. There's things that you can look into. There's stuff that can be done. And most of our materials also teach all this and give help and guidance and assistance of how you can get there. And a lot of times, especially for the women, it is a mindset. It is a mindset. So, if women can come to a point where, they had peace in their minds, or, we're not carrying around so many things, especially in marriage, because we continuously are carrying around, the aspect about are the bills being met? Is this being done? Is this being done? We come to a point where we cannot then separate ourselves when it comes to that sexual intimacy. And so we deny ourselves the right to have orgasms, because once you encounter that, you will want to go back to that pleasure center. So it is a yes. And yes, we do believe in oral sex. And I think I mentioned about how we also talk about personal hygiene. I think every body part that God has given us is a tool that we can use, And so, I don't know, you want to speak more?
Oh, yes. The Bible actually, in the book of Songs of Solomon, does encourage oral sex, and he talks not only about just oral sex, but he talks about using fragrances, and I think he mentions camphor and a couple of others. So even in the coaching sessions, we tell couples, use menthol or mints to be part of the whole experiences. When you do the blowing and all of that, and you use some mints, it heightens the cooling taste, fragrance, and feeling, and that heightens their whole experience of enjoyment. So the Bible has oral sex. Songs of Solomon does use a lot of euphemism to try and keep the language kosher, but but that's what he is insinuating. So it's important that we do the Bible, and the Bible, but the church obviously does have a lot of different positions. Some people believe that couples should only have missionary position sex and not any other style. When you start talking dog style or scissors or whatever else, they are really freaked out. So we believe anything that God has given to you as a couple is, like she said, a tool. Whatever we do within the confines, as long as we're not violating each other and bringing third parties, fourth parties into the context, God is very pleased with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, the Hebrews talks about the marriage bed undefiled. So it is a personal position, but again, it's a preference. So it's not something that couples have to get into. It's a preference. So, but for those that would have wondered, or they want to venture into it and have always thought, is it biblical, is it not? It's something that they can feel free and at liberty to do, because God honors, your marriage bed. And as long as it does not violate, getting yourself into sexual sin, I think that's what's key.
All right. Thank you. And then now we move on. Divorce rates are high, even within the church, even in the world. What would you advise someone who's discouraged? They are planning to get married, but they are looking at divorces in the church, and also couples that are within the church and outside the church that are struggling, who are about to throw in the towel. What would you say to them at this point in time?
Our advice is, before you take that decision to divorce or throw in the towel or give up, get some counsel from somebody who is solid, who is founded. Our marriage ministry has seen marriages. We actually run what we call a marriage recovery program, where we've seen hundreds of couples that were on the verge of divorce. Some had separated, some had divorced, coming back together. So we say, get wisdom, get knowledge, get understanding. In all you're getting, the Bible says, get understanding also. So it's the lack of knowledge that causes us to cause pain to one another within the context of marriage. So to take away the pain factor, you've got to learn how it works, similar to driving a car. If you drive your car and it's a sedan on-road vehicle and you're driving it in the mountains and on the rocks, it's going to break down soon because there's a violation of manufacturer specifications. So it's the same with marriage. If we violate manufacturer specifications, the marriage begins to break down. It's breaking down not because marriage is bad, but because you don't know how to make it beautiful. So learn. Invest in your marriage. Get into seminars. Read good books like ours. Get content. Invest in your marriage. The moment you stop investing in your marriage begins to die. Anything that stops growing begins to die. So don't stop investing. Keep growing. Get into good company. Get around people that have healthy marriages and learn what they are doing. And by best practice, you can enrich your own marriage.
Yeah, and also I think marriage is work. So that's why you find that the divorce rates are high even within the Christian community, because we kind of feel we can just let our guards loose and and just probably almost not pay enough attention to this thing that God has given us. And now remember, the devil does not like marriage, and broken families end up giving birth to broken communities and broken nations. And so it's something that we have to make a conscious decision to say, I choose to work at it. I choose to build my marriage, and I choose to submit. The Bible talks about submitting one to another. Yeah. So both husband and wife submitting to one another in terms of, I can't always have it my way. So I need to choose to give my spouse the room that they want. And we all have strengths and weaknesses. But a lot of times where divorce comes in, it's because we've been hard-hearted, and we also want to focus just on the weaknesses. But if we take time to just say, we choose to lay aside the weaknesses, let's celebrate on that which is good, because I have weaknesses and he has weaknesses. And what we've come to do is not to focus on the weaknesses, but to build one another, to complement one another. And that way, when we come together with that mind, we'll be able to overcome some of the challenges.
Yeah, right. Now coming to the book, The Greatest Sex Ever. how has been the reception both in and outside of the church, and where do you go from here?
Well, the church is receiving it quite well. I got about 30 of my friends, to pastors, church leaders, to read the book, to review the book, and to give me recommendations and so on. So the response has been brilliant. And the people that have read it and that have, I mean, The Greatest Sex Life Ever was a seminar for about 5 years before it became a book. And whenever we did that seminar, that's when you'd have people coming in. The highest attendance was always the seminar, including husbands that were unsaved. They would not come for any other seminar, but if they heard there's a pastor talking about having more sex in marriage, they would come. So I think the secular world is ready for candid conversation from somebody who will give them real facts, real information, practical stuff, and that's what this book is all about. So we're very practical, very candid, very direct in our conversation in the seminars, so we don't really beat about the bush and we help people. So that's the response right now in terms of the book. Since the book has come out, which has only been a few weeks, we haven't yet felt the response from the outside the church world, but we are doing a number of seminars and interviews in the next couple of weeks, and this is on radio stations and so on that are not church oriented. So that's where we're going to begin to heal. But they're already surprised that pastors are talking about sex.
I think that's the biggest thing. When they just hear it's a pastor that's spoken about sex, I mean, all the research we've been doing, all the inquiries, they're all like, pastor. And so I think we're very excited about the journey ahead. And of course, we know, some religious folks also have come to a point where it's like, they kind of like think that
too far.
We've gone too far. But I think that's the thing, we've made a personal choice in the decision. Now it's either, because there is a generation out there that, that is in need of these answers. And so we will go all out because God has said so.
And going on from here, we want to do seminars, we want to do coaching. We have a whole lot of exciting products coming out, workbooks, retreats that have been done. We have what we call the intimacy kit, which is a combination of oils and candles and massage resources and bath salts, adventure cards or sex coupons.
Sex coupons.
That all of this is designed to help couples enrich their marriage. So we are going all out to helping couples have the greatest sex life ever.
Thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that on social media platforms, or if there is a private maybe link that you can give, maybe if you can just give that.
Okay, we are available on Facebook, Dr. Tich and Faith Life. So Dr. Tich, they can find us there. Faith Life, we're available. We're on Instagram, Dr. Princisca, Instagram. I'm on Instagram as well, Twitter as well, and Facebook. So all those platforms were available. Our official website is drtich.com, drtich.com. So people can go there. Our emails, our contacts are there. They can purchase the book from anywhere in the world by going to our website. That gives them direct access, and we'll arrange all the technicalities behind the scenes. So that's how you can get in touch with us.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. I wish we could talk all day, but because of time, we have to stop here.
It's been so great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, all the great work you're doing. Keep the conversations going.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was King Boaz, and I was hosting Dr. Tich and Dr. Princisca, and we were talking about sex. I hope you learned a thing or two. Thank you so much. Until next time, King Boaz, I'm out.